Viewer discretion is advised.
Number 13, Blitz. So this one looked like a cross between Dennis Leary and the Eagle from the Muppets before, but that was redesigned to make him look more like an actual Seahawk. Thank God they got rid of that bulbous nose. It was pretty creepy. The Seattle Seahawks, Notre Dame quarterback Rick Mirer was billed as the next Joe Montana, but Montana won way more than 39% of his starts, and that dude, Joe Montana, won 4 Super Bowls. Mirer was the second overall pick in '93, proving time and time again that drafting second is cursed. Seattle Seahawks, John Leopold. John Leopold, I don't know how to say that, was the first kicker, and you don't even know, so don't correct me. You've never heard of this guy. He was the first kicker in Seahawks history, and he was also the worst, missing 13 of his 30 tries, leaving many sleepless in the Emerald City. He promptly retired after missing so many goddamn kicks. Seattle Seahawks, Aaron Donald. To say Aaron Donald is a one-man wrecking crew against the Hawks is an understatement. When the Rams play Seattle, you can just count on a sack for him, as he has 15.5 against them in 18 games. And if you ask the fans, the hate of him really isn't personal. It's just that he's so freaking good, he just fucks shit up. The Seattle Seahawks. From Go Hawks to Let's Ride, Russell Wilson has been the target of plenty of Seattle scorn recently. But let us not forget certified drop machine Jeremy Stevens, whose butterfingers hurt the Seahawks in Super Bowl 40 almost as much as the refs. He then went on to run his mouth more than his wife at a traffic stop. Seattle Seahawks, Ken Behring. Ken Behring wasn't just an asshole businessman, he also sucked as a team owner. Accused of sexual harassment, which was settled out of court, Behring also loved hunting endangered species, you know, like leopards and rhinoceri. Birds like Seahawks didn't mean much to him, as the team went 61-83 from 1988 to 1996, and then Behring tried unsuccessfully to move the team to LA. He finally sold the team to Paul Allen in 1996. The Seattle Seahawks. Before Deebo Samuel, there was Percy Harvin, the Vikings' versatile kick returner slash wideout slash guy that can line up anywhere on the field. So in 2013, the Seahawks were looking to add depth on offense, so they sent a first-round pick to the Vikings for Harvin. Harvin was often injured, got high as shit before every game.
There's not a game I've played in that I wasn't high.
And probably didn't like football. He voluntarily sat himself and beefed with his teammates. He did run a TD back in Super Bowl 48, though it's not like the Seahawks weren't already kicking the shit out of the Broncos. Harvin lasted only 1 year in Seattle, while the Vikes took shutdown corner Xavier Rhodes, arguably the best player in the week 2013 NFL draft. Super Bowl 49, Seahawks versus Patriots 2015. Yes, we all remember what happened at the end of this game, but the Seahawks didn't just blow it by not giving it to Marshawn. They also blew a 10-point lead in the second biggest choke job in Super Bowl history. When Doug Baldwin scored a TD with 4:54 left in the third, it put the Hawks up 24-14. That lead held until 7:55 left in the game, when Danny Amendola scored to cut it to 24-21, with Julian Edelman scoring with 2:02 left to finally take the lead. Here's a big thing people forget about the Butler interception at the end. Marshawn Lynch had already rushed for a 3-yard TD in the second quarter, and he made it look easy. Not giving it to him at the end was outright criminal, but also hilarious. Thanks, Pete Carroll. Seattle Seahawks, Tom Flores. It took a while for Tom Flores to make it into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. The two-time Super Bowl winning coach with the Raiders is definitely not in the Hall of Fame for his time with the Seattle Seahawks. Unfortunately, he also has nobody to blame, because from 1989 to 1994, he was the coach slash GM, going 37-59 during that stretch. Flores drafted bust Dan McGuire, yes, Mark's brother, and overall things were just sleepless in Seattle. Seattle Seahawks. Practice. We're talking about too much practice. In 2015, the team and head coach Pete Carroll were fined $300,000 for allowing too much contact between players during a June 16th OTA practice. The league also stripped the organization of 2 minicamp practices later that year. This came on the heels of similar violations by Seattle in 2012. The team also lost a practice last season for excessive contact. What a punishment. So basically, Pete Carroll is the Jim Harbaugh of the NFL, who is now the Jim Harbaugh of the NFL.
Seattle Seahawks. Seahawk, there is no such animal that's specifically called a Seahawk, but it's essentially a pigeon or a seagull. And you know what seagulls and pigeons are famous for? They are famous for shitting, literally, dropping bombs. They're famous for emptying their bowels all over people and their cars. And I can't even begin to guess how many car accidents and deaths there have been over the years because a pigeon or a seagull took a shit on somebody's car window or dashboard when they were driving and it caused a crash and it caused people to die. It might seem like a harmless joke to you, but this shit literally is serious to me. So all the pigeons and seagulls that are planning on taking over the world, they're in favor of the Seahawks name because they're being promoted and glorified by it, but it's really just, it's not acceptable.
Seattle Seahawks, LJ Collier. LJ was selected 29th overall by the Seahawks in the 2019 NFL Draft. The Hawks thought they were getting future building block, and instead what they got was 3 sacks in 4 years. Finally pulling the plug on their ill-fated first-round pick, Collier latched on to the Cardinals, where he played in 1 game last season and is still there as we speak, but I don't know for how long. Either way, massive disappointment. Seattle Seahawks, Mike McDonald. The Pete Carroll era is officially over, and they've moved on to another defensive-minded guy with a defensive background. He was the defensive coordinator for the Ravens over the previous 2 seasons. He's only 37 years old this upcoming year, so if he ends up being good, then hey, they'll be there for a long time. Again, we don't know what to expect. We don't know anything except that he's starting fresh, so he gets a 1 out of 5 on the hot seat ranking scale. Seattle Seahawks, Geno Smith. He's now put together 2 solid seasons, and the rebirth story from going from one of the biggest draft busts of all time to being good out of nowhere, it was nice at first, but now I think it's time and it's fair to start asking, what is Seattle's ceiling? Geno Smith, quarterback, after 2 straight mediocre seasons. He's not a draft bust anymore, but he's not an elite quarterback, although he does have an incredible highlight reel with a bunch of wow throws. But as I alluded to earlier, I think if Seattle has another 8 or 9 win season, which is where they've been floating around the last 2 years with Geno a quarterback, that they could look for a replacement in the draft, or at the very least they should. So I think Geno's prove it rating rather, is an 8.5 out of 10, even though he still is a good story. Seattle Seahawks, Leonard Williams. Really, again, another team where the Seahawks really don't get a lot of hype anymore. Ever since Russell Wilson left, Pete Carroll's gone now. The Legion of Boom days are long gone. So it's kind of hard to find an overrated player. But for this, I went with Leonard Williams because they signed him, they traded for him, and they are expecting him to be one of the better interior defensive linemen in the league. And he's merely just good. He's not great. He's never been dominant, whether it was with the Jets or the Giants. He's had a respectable career, but he's never been dominant interior force. And so, but the Seahawks, it feels like they're kind of expecting him to be that, and he's not. So he gets overrated. Seattle Seahawks, Rick Meyer, 1996. Another first-round bust. Meyer was seen as the next Joe Montana because he kind of looked like Joe Montana, and he went to Notre Dame. And after a respectable rookie season where he actually won Rookie of the Year over Drew Bledsoe, the bottom fell through, and he showed that he was just a scrub. And 96 would be his last year with the team that drafted him, the Seahawks. He went and put up 51% completion percentage with just 5 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. He had a 56.6 passer rating, took a bunch of sacks too, and had just 5.8 yards per attempt. Rick Meyer is proof that the power of being drafted super high in the draft will give you many, many chances over and over again if you're a quarterback, even if you've never actually shown that you can play at the NFL level.